On July 21st, 4 of us from the original group of 15, plus our leader Vili, left Ljubljana for a long drive back across Croatia to Serbia. We stopped briefly at the tiny village of Vukovar, Croatia, which was essentially obliterated by the Serbs in 1991, and where more than 200 Croatian prisoners of war were shot in groups of 10 to 20 and buried in a mass grave. The water tower here is the only structure to have survived, and it now serves as a symbol of these events. Continuing our drive, we arrived in Novi Sad, Serbia, late in the afternoon. Novi Sad is the second largest city in Serbia and was actually quite impressive and nice. Although there are indications of fortifications of some sort on this site, dating back as far as the early Bronze Age, about 3000 BC, the Petrovaradin fortress, as seen today, was built in the late 17th century, with many modifications to follow. The fortress doesn't look like all that much from the outside, but underneath the walls is a remarkable multi-level labyrinth of tunnels and passageways, which were used for troop and supply movement, undetectable by the enemy above ground. Arrow slits on the walls of the upper ground level provided undetected vantage points for firing at the enemy. As with any tunnel, there was really nothing much to photograph, but I was totally fascinated by this fortress on the Danube. One of the more interesting aspects of our visit to Serbia was exposure to differing opinions about the wars of the 90s. Our tour guide Vili, himself a Croatian now living in Bosnia, warned us of what to expect. Some in Serbia would just like to forget that the wars and the accompanying atrocities ever even happened. Many are in total denial about those years, choosing to place all the blame on the U.S. and UN peacekeeping forces. And then, of course, there are the radicals who believe that everything was justified and would do it again. These people, hopefully a minority, use as a sign of their agenda the date of the Battle of Kosovo, June 15th, 1389. This date could be found written as graffiti on walls and buildings and even appeared on T-shirts that were for sale. Vili had warned us not to make any public reference to that date because of the present-day controversy over it. On July 23rd, we made the short drive from Novi Sad to Belgrade, or Beograd, and immediately began a tour of the city. Our first stop was at the House of Flowers, the final resting place for Josip Broz Tito and his wife Jovanka. It is a greenhouse in which soldiers guarded the grave of the president for many years after it opened in 1982. It also serves as a museum dedicated to the memory of Tito and is one of the most visited museums in Serbia because it is an important symbol of a time and ideology which ruled in the region for almost 50 years. Belgrade is the capital and largest city in Serbia. Dating back to prehistoric times, it has, over the centuries, been occupied many times by many different peoples and nations. It was conquered by the Ottomans in 1521, and control went back and forth between the Ottomans and the Habsburgs/Austrians for the next 300 years. As a strategic location, the city was battled over in 115 different wars and razed 44 times. Beograd was the capital of Yugoslavia from its creation in 1918. trip leader, Vili, treated us to a very nice sunset boat ride on the Danube. We in turn treated him to dinner. Lesson to be learned: don't ever eat Mexican food in Serbia. The St. Sava Cathedral is the largest Orthodox cathedral in the Balkans and one of the most important Orthodox cathedrals in the world. Built in honor of 12th century Saint Sava, the Serbian apostle and the first archbishop of the Serbian Orthodox Church, the cathedral was constructed on the spot where the saint's relics were burnt by the Ottoman regime in 1594. Although far from completion, the cathedral was consecrated in 2004 and is a very imposing and beautiful structure. The crypt underneath the sanctuary was absolutely gorgeous.
We have Stover's lasagna back home, frozen.
I freeze mine.
Right.